In this video, I will demonstrate how to write data to a file in C++. For the output file, I'm going to use the same program that I used for reading from the input file. And the program that read the input file saved the data in 3 vectors: a vector of strings, a vector of integers, and a vector of doubles. I'm going to read the elements in each of these vectors and write them to another file. So I'm going to add output file functioning to the same program. The first thing I'll need is to have an output file variable. So right under my input file, I'll write ofstream. And so now I have 2 file stream variables. The input file is ifstream, the output file is ofstream. If you look at the first character of these data types, that tells you I for in and O for out. I'm going to wait until I'm at the very end of the last program before I do anything with the output file. So I'm going to come down here to the bottom. And what we've done at this point is we've just read the 3 records and saved the values in the vector, and we've closed the input file and printed the summary data. Now I'm going to do the output file processing. So the first thing I will need to do is, just like with the input file, I need to open this file. And if I already have a file named inventory.txt in my directory, then this file will replace the other file. I think I'll start my output file with a title. And so whenever I want to write to my output file, I'm going to write to it just like I write to cout. I put output file as my destination, the insertion operator, and then whatever I want to write. I'm going to say inventory report. All right, so that will be the first record in the output file. It would also be nice to format all of the prices with 2 decimal places. And we can do that if we use the iomanip header file and fixed and set precision. So I'm going to go back to the top and add iomanip as a header file to this program. So I can add it anywhere I want in this list of header files. I'll just put in include iomanip. And then I can return to the bottom of the program. Alright, so before I want to write anything to this file, I'm going to set up my output file formatting. So I'll say output file. I want to use fixed format and set precision 2. Because we're working with money, so I want to show dollars and cents. Now I'm ready to write the data. For this output file, I know how many records I want to write. And when we know how many times we want to iterate through a loop, a for loop is a good choice. So I'm going to create a for loop here. I'll define an iterator variable inside of it and initialize it to 0. And I want to execute this loop once for each element. So I need to know how big these vectors are. I can find that by asking one of the vectors its size. And so I'll execute this loop with I being 0, 1, and 2. Once I has a value of 3, I'll exit the loop, because my subscripts in my vector are 0, 1, and 2. Now creating the output file is pretty simple. I can just put in here output file, just like it was cout. And then I want to get the current element out of the names vector. That's the first one, has subscript of 0. And then I'm going to put a delimiter of a tab character. I need to have some way to set or signify where one field ends and another begins. Alright, so the next field that I want to put in there is quantity. I'm just going to copy this and paste. It's going to look exactly the same. It's the output file with the insertion operator of not names but quantity. I want to use the same subscript, so it'll be 0 the first time through, and I'm also going to use the tab character as my delimiter. The last vector will be the last field in my record, so I'm not going to put a tab character in it. So this one is also prices at I, and then I can just say end L, just like I might on the console window. Once I have finished writing each of the 3 records, I could also write some summary data to this file. So I can display or write to the output file the number of records, and I can also put the total quantity. I have that information as well. So I have the first record says inventory report, then I have the values of the 3 data records followed by the 2 summary items. At this point I'm finished writing to the file, so I'm going to close the file. And there's really nothing more to do in this program. Maybe add a comment, write summary data. Okay, so I'm going to execute the program. We know that reading from the file works because we've already tested that and we've loaded up the vectors. Now I want to use those vectors as input for my output file. Alright, and we did not display anything with the output file, so this window doesn't look any different from what it had looked like before. I'm going to close this, and what I want to do is find the output file. Now when we're working with files, if we don't put a directory in there, it's going to look for the files to be in the same directory as my CPP file. So I'm going to go to that directory and look for a file called inventory.txt. Now if you're not sure where your output file is or which directory your CPP file is in, one way you can find it is up here at the top. There's a tab that has the name of my file. I can right click on this, and one of the options is to open containing folder. That will take me directly to the folder where my CPP file is and any files that I read from or wrote to. So I went to the directory where my program is stored and I found my inventory.txt file. I opened it, and now let's take a look. The first line says inventory report. Then I have 3 data records with a string, an integer, and a double. These values are separated by tabs, which is a little hard to see just visually, but if you are in the file and you use an arrow to go to each character, you'll see it jump with each tab. Then I have the two summary items, the quantity of records and the total of the quantities. So now at this point, I could decide that I want these fields to line up better, and I could do some other work with this to make it look really nice. I'm not going to take the time to do that now. But once you have figured out how to write to the file, it's just a matter of making some modifications to make it look like you want it to look. So let's summarize what we did here. We added the iomanip library with our include files, and we only created one new variable. We created variable output file, and it's another file stream variable, but it's an output file stream variable. So it's OF stream. Then after I was finished reading from the file and loading the vectors, I then began working with the output file. So I opened the file, inventory.txt. I set up my formatting for my dollars and cents, or my money. And then I created a for loop where I wrote each record. So I iterated through the three vectors, and each iteration of the for loop printed the next element of the three vectors. Once I finished writing the vector data, I added 2 more lines to the file with summary information, and then I closed the file.